this is our submission for the what the heck challenges for decode. We have taken up challenge number 2, which is basically solving the problems faced by the SAP Travel team. The problems faced by the team currently include route optimizations and manual consolidations of the routes or the requests which have been raised by the employees. We have built an app which will be addressing most of these concerns. There are two apps. One is the customer app or the employee app, which is a web app, and the one which will be used by the admin for consolidating the requests once they have been raised by the employees. Right now, the one which you're seeing is the employee app. It's a web app which will let the employee raise a request for reserving a cab. So let's log in. Okay, so right now what you're seeing is the employee app. It shows you the profile details of the employee, the current bookings done by the employee. In this case, there are none. The history or the monthly usage of this service by the user, and then the configuration which will let the employee configure the destination address. The major usage of this app is to raise a request for reserving a cab, so we'll do so. We'll go for book taxi. There are a couple of information which this requires. So first is the address, the drop point. So I can provide any address as I want, or I could just use the pre-configured address. So in this case, I'll just use the pre-configured address. The reason I can provide anything. And I assume that there are 3 time slots, like at 9:30, 10:30 and 11:30. So I'll select the 9:30 slot and I'll book a cab, and it says that your request has been successfully received. Okay, so now the user has raised the request and is waiting for the admin to consolidate the request and provide the information like the when, the departure time, the place, my destination, and the taxi ID which I'll be using to avail this service.
Okay, so assuming that all the requests have been raised, it is now up to the admin to consolidate those requests, assign cabs, and notify the users. So let's log in as an admin. So now I'm presented with today's request list, and the requests have been clubbed according to the time slots, that is 9:30, 10:30 and 11:30. Let's now focus on the 9:30 slot. I have these couple of requests and they need to be consolidated. Now for each time slot we have this cluster option, so let's go for the cluster option. I can see that all the requests in the 9:30 slot have been grouped into 5 different clusters. A bit of background on this: the clustering is done based on the proximity of the destination points. So basically we take all these destination points, we geocode them to find out the latitude longitude pair. We use the Haversine formula to calculate the distance between any 2 latitude longitude pairs, and finally we use the k-means clustering to generate the clusters from these destination points. Now for each cluster we also provide you the location of the centroid of the cluster so that you can identify what cluster exactly it is. So basically take all the points in the cluster, we find out the location of the centroid of the cluster, and then we reverse geocode it to find out the address of the centroid of the cluster. Now that all the clusters have been formed, the only task remaining is to assign cabs. But an important fact before that is that the admin can override this cluster formation process. So for example, there is one cluster called the Brookfield cluster and there is a Whitefield cluster, and I as an admin, I think that it is okay if these 2 particular clusters can be merged and that the wait time for this particular user will not be much. So I can manually adjust the clusters, and you can see that the clusters have rearranged, and I can do something here as well. And now I have a cleaner set of 3 clusters, and I can start with the cab allocation process. There are 4 employees in this particular cluster, so I can select any 4-seater and start the notification process. The notification process will send emails to each of the employees in a particular cluster. The email will include information regarding the departure time and the cab which has been assigned to this particular cluster. I have received the email. It reads, "Hello user, your cab has been booked at 21:30. The cab number is K53C5674, which is exactly the one which you reserved right now." Apart from that, the admin can also perform certain analytics. So let's have a walkthrough of the analytics. This graph basically lets you know about today's overall status, that is number of cabs available, total number of active cabs which are running, the number of requests raised, and the number of clusters formed. The map here, the heat map, basically lets you know about the distribution of the destination points which are found out from the requests which are raised. We can find out that from the origin location being SAP, we can find out that there are a considerable number of destination points in and around SAP, and there are a lot of the density of these destination points in and around other places as well. So this basically lets you know about the distribution of the density and the density of the destination points. This graph lets you find out the distribution of the requests at different time slots. So for example, we can find out how many requests were being raised at the 9:30 zone, in the 10:30 zone, and the 11:30 zone. This graph lets you monitor the top three clusters, and the priority of these clusters are found out based on the frequency of occurrence of the particular clusters according to the K-means clustering algorithm. And based on that, you can take a decision that if a particular cluster is very frequent, then the number of cabs can be increased to smoothen the service. Some other information as well, like the current operating fleet, which lets you know whether the 9:30 slot is in operation, or the 10:30 or the 11:30 slot. It tells you the number of clusters formed in the slot, and the number of employees, and the number of active cabs. Some more information for this particular fleet, and you can just hover over it, and the tile flips to find out the cabs which have been assigned to this particular cluster. And these are few analytics powers that the admin can leverage. And now this completes the admin part of consolidation process, and now the user will be notified
Okay,
regarding
so
the
now
same.
once the consolidation has been done by the admin and the same has been notified to the employees, we can see that a lot of information has been updated on the employee app. For example, the date and time of departure has been updated, the destination point has been updated to the address I provided, and I have been provided with a particular taxi ID as well. Apart from that, I can also see a special option called view route. View route basically lets me know the route which the taxi will be taking. Along with that, a set of waypoints or the drop points of other employees who are present in the particular taxi. So here I can see that the route starts at A, so which is SAP, and it ends at Marathalli. So basically there are three waypoints. One is this destination, then the one is at Whitefield, and one is at Forum Value, and one is at BML layout. So there are three waypoints. A is the starting point, E is the ending point, and B, C, D are the three waypoints in the particular route. So this basically lets me know the route taken by the taxi. So we have seen both the versions of the app. One is the customer app, which will be used by the employee for raising the request, and we have also seen the admin app, which will be used for consolidating it. Thank you.